Welcome to the Scientific Café, a space where research, experts, and change makers come together to explore pressing issues of our time. This year, we are focusing on the powerful intersection between education and climate change. Through open conversation and inspiring stories, we aim to uncover how knowledge can drive action and how education can help communities rise to the challenge of the climate crisis. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and enjoy the conversation. Today, we are honored to have Professor Justin Dillon from University College of London. Hi, Justin. Welcome to the Scientific Cafe. Before start the conversation, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Good morning, and good to be with you. And thank you for the invitation to take part in this scientific cafe discussion. I'm Justin Dillon. I was trained as a chemist many years ago, and then became a chemistry teacher, a science teacher in London schools, and taught there for 9 years in high schools, and then moved into higher education, into teacher education and academic research. I was at King's for 26 years, and then went to the University of Bristol for a few years, and then University of Exeter, and then in 2022 I moved to what is now the University College London Institute of Education, and there I work in the Centre for Climate Change and Sustainability Education.
Let's start with the first question. What roles does education have in addressing the climate and environmental emergency?
The role of education in addressing the climate and environment emergency is there's a multitude of answers to that question, really. The first one, I think it should certainly provide education about the causes and the impacts of climate change, biodiversity loss, and other wicked problems, as they're called. It should people at the end of education should appreciate these issues are complex, and they should understand something about systems thinking. These are not simple problems with simple solutions. The third thing is, I think that people have to understand that these issues have been thoroughly studied, and that there's a scientific consensus about many of them. The fourth thing, I think, is recognizing that misinformation, disinformation are everywhere, and people should be able to know how to look for sources of high quality information. People should understand how researchers make knowledge, how scientists make knowledge about environmental issues and other issues, and realize that this knowledge is often refined and evolves and changes with time as we find out more. Understand that we need to do something to address the issue, and that we have been successful in the past in addressing environmental issues such as the hole in the ozone layer, which seems to be healing. And education needs to give young people the confidence and the skills to contribute individually and collectively in taking action, first locally and then on a wider scale. And it needs to do that in a context where people's climate anxiety is kept to reasonable levels. I think people should be anxious about the climate, but if it becomes debilitating, then it's a problem.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And in terms of school curriculum, where should climate change education be taught?
In the school curriculum in England, climate change is taught in science and geography. A number of countries take a similar approach, and you can see why. The problem with that is that science is the only subject which is taught up to the age of 16. You can opt out of geography at the age of 14. So students are already getting a very, very limited understanding of climate change without its historical, geographical, etc. Components. And so this current system is not working. I think, and many other people think, that a number of other subjects can contribute well to climate change and sustainability education. And those could be mathematics, the arts, the humanities. And we recently were involved in I was recently involved in a project with the UCL's Centre for Climate Change and Sustainability Education, Global Action Plan, which is an education charity, the National Association for Environmental Education. And we worked with learned societies, Royal Society of Chemistry, Royal Society of Biology, and subject associations, subject teacher associations, National Association for Teachers of English, and there's a group which coordinates these some of these organisations. And together we asked representatives of these organisations what contribution different subjects could make to climate change and nature education, I think the phrase was. And I think about 24 different subject associations and learned societies got back and said, our subject can contribute this. And we put this together in a report. It's freely available on the web. And it just shows you that there is tremendous goodwill and a tremendous desire amongst teachers of a whole range of subjects to contribute in different ways. And my worry is that this goodwill and this capacity for interdisciplinary and multidisciplinarity is not being taken up by education policymakers. And that's a major issue because time is running out.
So, very thank you for that. How well are schools responding to the climate environmental emergency, and what factors seems to have a positive impact?
So how schools are responding, it varies considerably, and this is a major issue because we know, and I've visited a number of schools that are doing amazing things. We have in our centre, we have partner schools that are doing fantastic work across in different curriculum subjects. We've just started a pioneer school scheme, which is teacher-led and which is involving schools making some substantial, impactful changes to the way they teach or to their in-school curriculum. And those schools, our partner schools and those pioneer schools and the other schools I've seen are doing good things are characterized by one or more highly committed members of staff and supported by their leadership. And those two facts together seem critical. But we also know that there are many other schools that are not taking the kind of action that we've seen these schools taking. And that's because they possibly lack the highly committed staff, or they lack the leadership. And so you're getting a huge and wasteful variation between what schools are doing. I visited schools in China, in Nanjing, an elementary school, a primary school in China, which was doing fantastic things. But it was only one of the many, many schools in that city. I visited a school in Singapore that's doing amazing things. It's one of just two experimental secondary schools. So there's enormous potential, but at the moment, the answer to the question is what are schools doing is still, it varies considerably, and many schools don't seem to be doing as much as they possibly could do.
On this other side, what do teachers want to teach about climate change and how they support children getting actively engaged in action?
We've done surveys of teachers, and there have been other people who have carried out interviews and surveys with teachers over quite a long time now. And we've got quite a good picture, I think, in some countries of what teachers want, not every country by any means, but certainly in the US and certainly in the UK, we know that teachers tend to want to do more than actually their curriculum or the education policy is encouraging them to do. So, for example, a survey I was involved with Paul Howard-Jones and colleagues from the University of Bristol interviewed over 600 teachers, gave a survey to over 600 teachers. And we asked them at what age students should get involved in different approaches to climate change and sustainability education. And we found that there was a variation amongst teachers as to what they thought children should do at different ages. But we found that teachers' comfort in delivering climate change education correlated with the reported resource availability. That means that if teachers felt well resourced, they felt more confident in teaching about these topics. And with most teachers in the survey were think only basic literacy was a greater funding priority. So teachers, on the whole, supported an action-based climate change education curriculum, including issues of global social justice. And that would begin in primary school and elementary school with mitigation projects such as conservation, local tree planting, advocating family change, changing the consumption of fuels and things in the school, reducing food waste, rising up to taking part in local campaigning, probably at the sort of border of elementary and high school, with most teachers supporting the inclusion and the support of civil disobedience, but indicating that should begin and beyond the age of 11. So there's some variation amongst teachers as to at what age they think children should take part in these different responses to climate change education. And this is a particularly important survey, I think, because we had a large, very high response rate because the teachers were all involved in a professional development program and they could take part in the survey. We got a very high response. Other surveys have found similar results, but they tend to be online surveys where teachers volunteer to take part if they wish to, and you tend to get people who are broadly sympathetic to climate change education taking part, so you don't really get a cross section. So we think the survey that we did is probably more valid than some of the online surveys that are being carried out.
That's very interesting indeed. So, my last but not least questions is what does research tell us about effective approaches to climate change and sustainability education?
Obviously, as time has gone by, more and more people have been researching climate change education in schools because schools are doing things, mainly in, again, science and geography. And so about 7 or 8 years ago, Martha Monroe at University of Florida and colleagues reviewed the literature. They looked at 900 studies and found 49 that had focused on assessing the impact of climate change education. And they sort of synthesized them and came up with two themes that are most common to the successful environmental education in this context. The first is focusing on personally relevant and meaningful information to students. And the second one was a pedagogical one, was using active and engaging teaching methods. So those are sort of overarching themes that people can learn from, the personal relevancy, active and engaging. And they came up with 4 strategies that seem to have been shown to work probably more than others. And one was engaging students in deliberative discussion, which means rather than simply listening to and watching PowerPoints and listening to people present information, actually taking active part in discussions and trying to tease out different world views and different views on controversial topics, come up with their own ideas and their own opinions. The second one is interacting with scientists in some way, and that could be scientists coming into the school or engaging online or visiting scientists so that people can see how scientists work, that scientists are generally normal people doing normal things and can have a very rigorous way of going about building knowledge. Most kids don't really meet a scientist in everyday life, certainly very often, and not for long. So the third one was addressing misconceptions. We know there are a lot of misconceptions about climate change and sustainability and all sorts of environmental issues. Those have to be addressed by teachers in school in ways which convince young people that, that there's some trustworthiness in what the teachers are saying, what the books and the textbooks are saying. And the fourth one was implementing school or community projects. And many schools across the world are involved in improving their own school grounds, growing food for use in the school canteen or kitchen. And some are even taking part in linking projects with the outside community, so that the community comes into the school and helps, or students go out into the community. So those four strategies: deliberative discussion, interacting with scientists, addressing misconceptions, and implementing school or community projects, seem to be the ones that at the moment are working and helping people to appreciate climate change education better.
This is Diane. Thank you very much for your time and sharing with us your thoughts about this. This example illustrates how research can directly influence educational curricula, potentially contributing to a positive impact on climate transition. Thank you, Justin, for sharing your experience and passion with us today. If you like the conversation, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more episodes of The Scientific